Hello, my name is Gordon Shepherd, and I'm here today to tell you about the Executive Alignment Workshop. Now, I've put this workshop together based on my experience as an organizational development consultant, leadership coach, and meeting facilitator. And when I've done engagements that can go anywhere from probably just around 30 hours with sort of a senior leadership team, all the way up to 500 hours, I've actually spent time over a multi-year period, popping in and out, helping people to get aligned. I've seen the results. And so now I've wanted to bring sort of my work into a workshop format to get it out to more executive teams and make sure that, as many as possible can gain the skills that they need to get in alignment so they can optimize not only their own team, but actually then get optimization throughout their entire staff, throughout their organization, and deliver that so they can, deliver better services to their customers and their community as a whole. One of the questions that we have to ask, though, is what happens when executives are not aligned, right? So one of the things we see frequently is that, the senior executive, the CEO, has to manage relationships between the executives that aren't getting along, when alignment's not occurring. Sometimes there are open disputes happening right in the meetings, which is not productive. Sometimes there's just simply a lack of engagement. Executives are there, but they're not really there. I mean, we know the cost of this. Obviously, it's, the profitability is hurt. Your stakeholder group will notice the difference when there's no alignment, and then we don't have a chance even to optimize. We can kind of do our individual siloed roles, but it's not going to lead to the best possible results. So what happens when executives are aligned, right? Well, I'm going to just sort of say that profitability goes up, satisfaction goes up, and the reason I've got this simple one picture up is this idea of, what can we raise a toast to? Can we make this effort so that we can raise a glass and smile? And when I say smile, I mean smile in every way possible, dollar-wise, satisfaction-wise, getting away from the stresses of some of those misaligned scenarios. So this workshop is going to help you to understand the importance of executive alignment, learn the organization planning 5-step system. This is a very detailed system based on a 300+ page workbook that I put together to help executives get truly aligned. It's also going to help you, build awareness, empathy, and communication skills. It'll help you to create accountability and sustainability. And it'll also help you to get inspired. This just doesn't get talked about often enough at the executive level because we're so often spending our time putting out fires. And if we can get just to at least a moment in time where we explore what inspires us, it's actually a really valuable thing that I've seen get great results over and over again with the executive teams that I work with. Okay, about me. So Gordon Shepherd, I mentioned organizational development consultant, leadership coach, meeting facilitator, and just dedicated, honestly, to organizational excellence. It doesn't matter if I'm working with sort of a small nonprofit leadership team, all the way up to I've worked with billion-dollar companies. So I've been in so many different rooms with so many different levels, but seen commonalities and really want to be able to be the one that helps you to facilitate your journey to alignment on your executive team. Again, this is an example of where I worked with a commercial team in a large company, again, down to the small nonprofits and some of those people that I've met there. It's just been great to be in so many different settings to help people get the information they need. And really, I've been called assertively kind. And this is a moniker I wear proudly because it's the hope that speed to market is really, really important. To think that it would be blocked by maybe just a bit of lack of knowledge on the executive level or misalignment or maybe some communication issues, if I can help to grease those wheels and make things better, that's why I get out of bed in the morning, honestly. Here's a stat from Forbes. Only 29% of employees say that their leader's vision for the future always seems to be aligned with the organization's. Your people feel it when the executive team is not aligned, right? I mean, pretty obvious if in terms of when we see the potential in when you're not aligned and why you need to actually make the effort to get aligned. And I do believe that this workshop approach is one of the best ways to do it. Okay, so the first step I mentioned was understanding the importance of executive alignment. And I'm going to point out some obvious things, but these are good reminders for anybody on the executive team. Happy are you? I can't tell you how often enough, because I take a 360-degree approach to helping executives get better, how often they're unhappy, right? Unhappy in their relationship, unhappy with their health, unhappy about people and just not, one fellow said to me, they just don't do what I want them to do. Why can't I get them to do that? So If you invest in, getting people going, singing from the same songbook, Happy Are You is a really important thing. Obviously, we get a more productive leadership team, right? We're not siloed off. We're not competing, right? We're getting in alignment. We want to save time. We want to make more money. That one's pretty obvious. I want to bring back the laughter into the hallways. I mentioned that I was with one organization for a period of 500 hours over multi-year. That was one of my favorite compliments I got after, I watched one of the junior leaders deliver the strategic plan to the entire company. But also then one of the senior leaders said, hey, it's good to get the laughter back in the hallways. Thank you so much for the work that you've done here. That's something that I would hope for any executive team. And finally, you want to have a bigger impact. If you are not in alignment, you don't have a chance to optimize and work at the highest possible level. That is why it is so important to, again, get moving in the same direction. So what will happen when we get this right? I'm going to leave that question for you to think about, and I'm going to come back to it at the end of telling you about the workshop itself. The organization plan 5-step system is an approach that I've developed out of a fatigue on watching those strategic plans get built and then not get executed. And I really feel that a more holistic and a deeper dive at a deeper level of detail is absolutely necessary. And here's the 5 steps that I help executives learn, and then they can follow to build their own organization plan and bring that thing to life on a daily, monthly, quarterly, and annual basis. First, you have to have a strategy, your vision, mission, values, your goals and objectives. Pretty straightforward. I think we need a work plan to actually make the strategy happen. So often this step gets skipped, and we hear executives say, well, I got to the end of the year. That was the next time I looked at the strategic plan. But we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that work plan is keeping you accountable along the way. You need people and great operations to execute your strategy and your work plan, of course, and we dive deeply into that, and I'm going to show you some examples of that in just a minute. And finally, I find that executives can often get off track if they're not focused on the key results. And I don't mean 40 or 50. I mean, what are the main ones that you need to know so that you know everything is on track, so that your team knows that the whole thing is moving in the right direction. All right, the 5 steps are based on the organization plan template that I've put together. Again, I mentioned this 300+ page document that I transfer over to executives who take this workshop, and then they can start to build their own organization plan once they've got it in their hands. It's all keys around this 1-page dashboard. So you can imagine if your executive team understands their strategy, their work plan, their people, their operations, and their results, and then all the details that are underneath that. Now, this is just the 1-page plan that sits on top of the 300 pages, right? So if we dig into any one of these areas, let's get into it for a second. In the strategy section, if we look at the first column, actually I'm going to look at the second column first. Typical strategic plan, right? Your vision, mission, your purpose, right? We've got then our goals and objectives and our values. We've established what those things are. And then we get back into here. And the reason I've got this other level of detail in here is we often skip this step before we get to strategic planning, right? We don't have a full market understanding. We don't have a full competitor analysis. We don't know and haven't thought about all the stakeholders that could possibly be involved in making our strategy go forward. So that's why this checklist asks you to make sure that those boxes are checked before we get to strategic planning, right? And there's more detail to it, of course. I'm going through it quickly. I'm just saying this is part of what happens in the workshop. In the work plan, where I focus is on the goals and objectives, right? So here we are back to the strategic plan where we've established those goals and objectives. We write those down in our work plan, and then we do a very concrete aspect of what, who, and when, right? What's the main goal? One of the main goals might be to have a wonderful workforce. And then your objectives to drive what that is. You could have the best training. Let's say you wanted to put in the best systems, these types of things. Those become your objectives. And then we want to know, again, who, what, and when. And we get that tracked so that we can actually measure that up against our results and make sure that those goals and objectives are being accomplished. In the people area, of course, we need to know what our current organization structure is like right now, and we need to think about what that wants to look like in a year. We go through that exercise and help you to imagine. Sometimes it brings up some very difficult conversations around the fact that there may be some people in roles right now in that structure who need to either be upskilled, moved over, or possibly exited from the organization. As an outside objective voice, I often bring that rigor to the situation and allow you to make those important decisions in terms of the structure. We want to talk about the leadership team, right? I mean, we're talking about executive alignment, so we're going to talk all through that area as well. And finally, the competencies Does everyone on the executive team have the competencies they need to do their role? Do they need to get some training? What do we need to do to enhance what they're doing? Of course, there's more to people here and we go deeper, but you can see this is included in the template. And again, as executives are checking off each box in the people area, it's very, very detailed. Okay, into operations. This is a big monster in terms of detail, but we know that people on their executive teams are sort of in their area. They're specialized. Let's say they're in HR, they're in IT, maybe they're technology, whatever those things are. This checklist then allows each executive to get to know enough about each area of operations that will make them effective and allow them to do integrated decision making when they go to do something. So IT doesn't need to work in isolation, right? They need to work in conjunction with all the other aspects of operation would be one example. Where I've highlighted here, again, we need to know an inventory of our current products and services. What are we doing on the innovation side? How are we selecting projects? This is something that comes up all the time in terms of roles and responsibilities and project selection. The larger you get, the more you lose contact with what people are doing at different levels of the organization, and they may be off down a rabbit hole that is not tied to your goals and objectives from that strategic plan. So that's why we have a check part for this in this area. Of course, there's more detail, of course. Human resources and safety, we get into some very detailed discussions in that area. IT, AI, policies, document control, quality assurance, advocacy, standards, regulations. These are all areas that we need, again, a bare minimum of recognition for each of your executives back to helping them to make more integrated decisions. Procurement, asset management, equipment, facilities, we touch on those. Sales, marketing, communication, critical areas. Again, we need to know enough about those areas to be functioning at a high level as an executive. Admin, legal, accounting, financing, lessons learned. This one often does not get tracked, right? We just keep moving forward. We keep moving forward. There's a checklist piece in here for that as well. And finally, again, because we spend so much time on what's not working, there's an area in here to talk about what are your wins and how are we celebrating those wins, right? What's the way to really build culture? And I think this is one of them that can be taken into account to develop a high-performing organization. In the results area on this one-page checklist, we're going to get into some key measurements. We're going to remind you about which ones you need to think about in the checklist that we have down in the pages that are related to that, and we'll help you to think about the ones that drive your business to make sure that you are measuring those key results. And the next step then is to build awareness, empathy, and communication skills. And this is natural, right around areas like, self-awareness. Do you know what type of person you are? Do you know the type of person that you're dealing with? Do you know how to interact? We want to help you also build team awareness, right? What's the strengths of this team? When do we need to bring in outsiders to enhance the strengths that we have? How do we make sure that our communication is at the highest level? Are we managing our time in the right way? I can't tell you how often I run into executives who are really not very good at delegation. And once you point it out to them, their first reaction is, well, I'm too busy. But then we help them learn how to do it for whatever reason is blocking them, overcome that block. And now we're into helping them really manage their time and focus on what they're responsible for, which are the goals and objectives, right, to drive those things forward. Conflict management, it comes up in every executive team. We need to know how to do this in a productive manner. And there's some references in there. And again, there's some great book references in there that people can get into and when they dig down into the template. And finally, we want to help you make a list of ways to celebrate. So we get some payola for all this work that we're putting in to help your executive team get aligned. We also, in the next step, want to make sure you create accountability and sustainability. And we do this by teaching you the ACT acronym, right? ACT stands for A is accountable, as in who is accountable for that task or that project, who should be consulted for that task or that project, who should be told for that task or that project. We get it into a basic form, right? What's the task? Who are they accountable, consulted, and told? For example, if we had to bring in a human resource information system, that was the task. Who's responsible for it? Probably who's accountable? Probably the head of HR, right? Who needs to be consulted? Well, the entire C-suite, but mainly the CEO, let's say, and maybe your CFO as well. And then who needs to be told? Well, we need to know, there's probably some managers that need to know this is on the way because they're going to be asked for some information. You can see that's a very basic example. And then when is it due? So basically, if we can introduce this ACT and consider it with every task or major project that we're working on, then we can build accountability into the system. We go into many examples of how this can work, but again, it's part of the discipline of developing an aligned team. Finally, what inspires you? That's that last step. I ask this question in every engagement that I'm involved with. I think it's an important question to ask because so often people are, again, snowed under by problems, by what's bugging them, by what's not working. What inspires you? Terry Fox, I'm a huge fan. The guy, it's 143 marathons that he ran on his way to running across Canada. And since he did that Marathon of Hope back in the 80s, it's over $1 billion has been raised for cancer research around the world. I mean, he inspires me. Maybe it's sport, maybe it's your family, maybe it's your team, maybe it's some of these big figures in our lives that we look up to. Whatever it is, we need to spend time with your executive team to find out what inspires them and just sort of jog ourselves out of that work mode for a second and get into the really, why are we here? Here's the recap. We want to help you to understand the importance of executive alignment in the workshop. We want you to help you to learn the organization planning 5-step system. We want to help you to build awareness, empathy, communication skills, create accountability and sustainability. And finally, we want to help you to get inspired, right? There's different ways to deliver this workshop. For a high-functioning executive team, we can do a really fast rip in a day and get you the high level. You take the booklet away for yourself and you then go to work on that. The 2-day workshop is recommended, and maybe not even on 2 consecutive days, but we can do this on 2 separate days, probably in 1 quarter. And again, we're starting to get the material at a deeper level into the hands of the executive team, and they can really then go forward with it. For emerging leaders or executives that really need a bunch of work, there's an opportunity to do an 8-module and capstone project format. And that format is really valuable over about a 6-month period, but you can see then in each of those areas, operations specifically, we're going to dig into it and give people a more detailed level of skills and understanding that help them to be in much better shape. And then when I say the 60 hours, if you want to combine the training of 32 hours plus some leadership coaching, that is just a fantastic way to get these concepts into your executive team and then to really make them stick. And when I say the coaching, it's probably going to come from a variety of people. I have areas of specialization in leadership coaching, operations improvement, this kind of thing. But when we get into HR and IT and accounting, we'll bring in those right people to make sure your executives are getting strong, qualified voices to make sure their skill set is growing at the fastest rate possible. And you can imagine the 60 hours, and sometimes it's 100 and sometimes a little bit less. That investment in a 2,200 hour year is a really good one because it brings that alignment up very, very quickly. Of course, we can customize any one of these formats for your needs to make sure that you are on the right track. Some of the details, I'm a highly experienced instructor delivering the bulk of the material, and then I work with other qualified professionals in the areas of, again, recruitment, HR, IT, AI. I have connections into people that can bring in highly skilled parts of this discussion to make sure that you are loaded for bear. The 300-page workbook has got a retail value of $200. That's included for every participant who is in the workshop. It's a great team building opportunity, right? You can hear that we're going to cross all the functions and make sure that, when we're talking about HR, that everybody's talking about HR at the same time. Everybody's talking about IT at the same time. To realize what the pain points are, to realize that need to open up communication across all areas. Professional development credits are sometimes a significant factor for people in this area. And finally, you do get a certificate of completion, and that's going to be something that you can take away. What's going to happen when we get this right? I asked you that question earlier in this explanation, and I think you can see the answer, right? I mentioned in that 60 to 100 hour range, if we invest to get all these different areas covered, then we're in a really good position to really have your executive be fully aligned, optimize yourself, your entire team, the entire organization, and serve your customers and your community at the highest possible level. That's what's going to happen. If you have any questions or you'd like some more information, go to businessexpertsolutions.com. Get in touch. I would love to hear from you. And then in there's also the workshops tab. You'll find out the different workshops that are offered there, including this one. I look forward to hearing from you about the Executive Alignment Workshop and how we can deliver it for you and your team.